Okay. Hello, welcome to Miss Disabilities. Today I have a guest all the way from Ontario, Canada, talking to me about what it's like to live with a disability in a so-called developed world. Because those of us in developing countries, we have a different experience from those in the developed world. So it will be a very interesting conversation, I hope. My guest today is Sarah, is just Jessica Odi, who um who has a disability, which I'm sure she'll tell us about. Jessica, welcome to the show. Thank you so much for agreeing to be on the show.
Hi, thank you so much for having me.
And I first met Jessica when she did this lovely picture of me.
Oh, I'm
Yeah,
framed. That's so exciting.
yeah. I just love the way you envisage me in this dress and all the stuff because I've never worn a strand of pearls in my life, but at least with this picture, I can envision what I would look like if I wear a strand of pearls. So tell me about the picture and how you got around to in the first place you were commissioned to do it by whom? Who, which
Yes.
organization?
Actually, this is like a full circle moment for me. I was commissioned back in 2018 by Wells Fargo and SS&K Design Group to draw historical figures with disabilities. And so the scope of the project was to do these vector illustrations, and they were all up at the New York Stock Exchange, as well as the No Barriers Summit for Wells Fargo's With Always commitment, and that's their commitment to hiring people with disabilities within the industry. So that was the very first project for my disability advocacy work. Before that, I was, applying it to my everyday life, but I had never worked on such a large scale before. And I was so excited to have you be one of the figures that I had to draw. And then now getting to be interviewed with you, it's just a full circle. It's so mind blowing.
So how did you what you were showing pictures of me, right? And you used that to come up with this artwork, right?
Yes. Exactly. So I was given reference photos, and then first I did sketches in Photoshop on my
Mm.
tablet so that we could get like a feel for the form and the colors that we were going to be using, because we also had to use Wells Fargo's brand colors as well. And then once we got approval, and as we went through the design stages together, then I went in Illustrator and I did vector outlines of all of the drawings that I did.
So which other figures did you draw? I mean, apart from me, who else did you draw? I mean,
Yes, so I drew Harriet Tubman, Louis Braille, Justin Dart. Oh my gosh, Vince. It's not even coming to me last name. I have them all up on my website.
okay. I will check out your website after, and I'm sure some of my viewers would also love to check it out as well. Is it the Disabled Life website or is it a different website?
Yes, so the disabled life .ca, that is a side project that my sister Leanna and I started. And we just sort of started a blog a long time ago about drawing cartoons based on our life living with a disability. We often use humor in our everyday life and are pretty sarcastic. So we decided to put that up on the internet. And, we've been honored with the amount of traction we've been getting. Recently, we had to kind of take a pause on the blog. There were some family things that happened health-wise, and we had and the state of the world going on right now too. So we sort of took a pause, but we've been transferring it all over to Instagram, and everyone's been so supportive and sharing our comics, and it's been like we've been discovered again. It's been really exciting.
Yes, your sister also has a disability?
Yes. So my sister and I have the same mystery diagnosis, we'll call it. We're 2 years apart, but we were both born with a disability called spinal muscular atrophy. And then fast forward about 20 years, a neuromuscular specialist saw us and was like, there's no way you have this. Like you lived way past your life expectancy of 2 years old, because when you're diagnosed at birth, that's like the life expectancy they give you. And our symptoms just didn't really match. So they're still testing and they still aren't really sure what we have. So it's been about 10 years, I think, that we've actually been living in this not sure.
But what are some of the symptoms? I mean, what are some of the symptoms?
So it's definitely some sort of either like neuromuscular or muscular dystrophy of some sort. So like I've never walked. I have, my hips are actually dislocated just because the muscles weren't really strong enough to keep them in place. So they're permanently, I have scoliosis. So like also like fatigue, energy levels. I find like if I exert too much energy, then I kind of lose function as I go. And then if I don't exert enough energy, then I'm not using it. So it's like that weird balance of figuring out what to do. But it's like slowly progressive, you know? So like over time, I've lost more ability and stuff. Like I used to be able to do the splits or sit up without supports and things like that. Whereas now I pretty much rely on my wheelchair mostly.
So you have a full-time caregiver?
So right now I'm in the middle of a transition. My parents have always been my caregiver. We have this amazing accessible home that my mom and dad and family built for us years ago, and it can fit 2 large wheelchairs. Everything's ground level, and now we've been transitioning into bringing care into the home. So we have like PSWs, we call them like personal support workers here in Canada, that come in and help us in the daytime.
Okay. But so what I presume that Canada has a very good social welfare system. So they have all the facilities available for people with disabilities, right? So you have access to caregivers. You have access to to allowances and things when by the mere fact that you have a disability. We don't have any of those things here. So basically, if you have a disability, it's just you and your family, and it's a big and it's a big challenge because a lot of people with disabilities are not educated because there's this whole stigma about disability in this part of the world, which is I believe due to a lot of ignorance. And so that is why some of us do what we do to educate the public and make people realize that just because you have a child with a disability, it doesn't mean that the child's life is over, or your life is over for that matter. So, yeah. So I mean, those are some of the differences between the developed world and the developing world. I lived in Britain for a while, so I know the facilities that are available in those countries. And when you contrast it to what we have here, the gap is really huge, really really huge. But I think we are maybe, let's say, 50 years ago or 60 years ago, Canada was probably where we are now with regards to disability rights and access. So I think it's a gradual process. And the most important thing for me is to get the community to buy into the message, because once society buys into the message, then the politicians or the government or whoever has no choice but to listen to what society has to say for that matter. What do you think of that?
I mean, definitely. You were so right about that. And even here, like, I'm very fortunate enough that we do have services that are available, like this this service that we have now, for instance, was more of like an emergency situation, whereas last year my mom had cancer, so being our primary caregiver didn't really work out anymore, so we started transitioning into this company that allows an agency to come in and take care of you. And of course, given that it's not self-managed care, there's some like road bumps along the way a little bit. They have people don't show up at the same time every day. You're not guaranteed the same person all the time, depending on who they have staffed. We've been left behind a couple days before where, there'd be like, oh, sorry, no one could come up, because we're a 2-person job according to safety regulations. So they would come in and they wouldn't hire someone else to come in that day. So we would be left stranded, or I'd have to call my dad at work or something, and we wouldn't be able to go to the bathroom that day. And it's just mind-boggling sometimes that we have these systems in place and everyone thinks, oh yeah, of course you have care, of course you have this, but unless you have to actually experience it, you're not really familiar with the systems in place and how we can make them better. There's one transition that my sister and I are working into where it's self-managed care. It's called like direct funding, so we actually get government funding help to hire our own staff and to hire our own people to come in. Obviously, with COVID this year, we had to put all of that on hold. We were just starting the process. And the application process was enormous. I mean, you had to prove that you knew how to be an employer, all the insurance that goes involved with it, how you're going to be paying them, everything. Like, we had an entire booklet. I think we studied for months before we even got this interview with them. And we passed the interview. And now we're waiting at that state. But it's so true. I feel like, you have to kind of make it told. We need to share our stories and our experiences and how things are working and not working, so that they'll listen and they'll understand. And you do it in every avenue, like through art, through comedy, through activism, through politics. Sorry, that's my dog. He's very excited about this as well.
No, so because I think that's one of the main reasons why I started doing this show, because I feel that people have been talking for us for too long. It's about time that we also talk for ourselves, because we know what we go through. And honestly, sometimes I get a bit irritated when I see so-called experts about our various conditions who don't have those conditions sitting down talking about us, and I'm like, what do you know about what we go through? So it's about time that our voices were heard. And another way, luckily for us, these days with the internet, it's very easy to have these kind of conversations and all that. Thank God for the internet. Otherwise, there's no way we could be having this conversation. But I think that it's, as I said, it's very past time for us to make our voices heard, and for us to talk about what we go through, to talk about what we like and what we don't like, and to let people stop having preconceived notions about us. And for me, beyond that, I think that when it comes to I don't know, I can imagine how frustrating it might be for you to have to deal with a different caregiver, and almost every day, depending on who they send, because it's such an intimate relationship that you have with whoever is looking after you. The person gets to see you naked and all that stuff, and it's not something that you want everybody to that you're comfortable with everybody seeing, right?
Yes, exactly. It's such a process. Like, I familiarized myself with kind of being, I call it shameless, as far as, there's been a lot of people through the years that have had to see me naked to take care of me. So that kind of goes out the window. But it's true, it's like, we all, like, we get exhausted in our day. We have things to do. We have stuff to get to. And then all of a sudden, I also have to stop and explain every part of the process to someone new again or retrain them. Because it's like, if I'm not put in my chair a specific way, then my legs can go numb for the entire day. And then I'm trying to like finish a deadline for work with pins and needles in my butt. And it's like, makes it so much more difficult. So definitely. And I think like people don't understand like sometimes the little nuances that go into it and the sort of intimate relationships we have with these people taking care of us. And like I said, we usually use humor to get through a lot of it because, I always find it that like people are so weirded out, like it's not their norm. I'm like, for me, this is my norm, for me, I don't understand like what it's like not to have people help you to go to the bathroom. I consider it a privilege that I've never had to take care of myself in that sense, like it's completely opposite sometimes.
Yeah. But I mean, I always say that for those of us who have lived with disabilities our whole lives, I think we are better than people who don't have a disability from the beginning. They suddenly, in the middle of their lives, they suddenly become disabled because they don't know how to cope. Whereas we have learned our lives, we have lived our whole lives being in this situation, more or less.
Yeah, it's so true. And the thing is like, that's what's so beautiful about the whole disabled community in general, is everyone's different levels of stories and experiences. They're all different. We have so many different disabilities, and together we can kind of, bring it all together and bring a new light in. I find like everyone at one point is going to become disabled in some sort of way in life. Like our bodies are going to fail us as we age. Some minds fail us while we age, or I don't even like to use that term, but they just work differently. We don't do things the way we used to. But people who were born with their disabilities have that like extensive knowledge where we're faced with that mortality. We're faced with those big life things from the beginning. We're faced with the differences in how we do things and adapting to a world that's really not built for us. And I couldn't imagine what it would be like to have ability and then all of a sudden lose it and become disabled. I feel like that's an entire different path. Like you have to deal with so much internalized ableism as well as just your whole life changing overnight. Whereas that's one weird benefit that I have, where it's so progressive and slow that I don't even notice my loss until I kind of look back of, I used to be able to do that, back in the day. And that's okay. Now I do it this way,
Yeah, I always say that we are the most adaptive creatures in the world, because I mean, in the first place, the world is not being built for us, so we have to find a way to live within these environments that we find ourselves in. And I always say that I feel that our environment disables us more than our actual disability.
Yeah. It's
Yeah.
so true.
Yeah, because I mean, if let's say the world was built for us, everything was accessible. We had every facility that we needed to be able to survive and live. I mean, a complete wholesome life. I think we would be more independent than we are.
Oh, it's so true. We live within the confines of the structures that are not built for us. Perfect example. We are finally getting a sidewalk between one block of road near my home that has not been there for 20 years. I haven't been able to just cross this street because there's too much gravel. So I've had to like interweave in all of these different subdivisions just to get like 2 minutes down to like a Tim Hortons. It's like this little cafe near my house. And now we're getting it. And it's so exciting and yet also frustrating that it took 20 years for someone to put a little piece of sidewalk down just so I could get to this coffee shop without it taking an additional maybe 10 to 15 minutes to get there just because of one little strip of concrete. And like my whole thing is I'm a big fan of interdependence. I feel like even people who think like who are non-disabled and who think they live independently, we don't. You know, it's kind of a myth. Like, we're dependent on everything. We're dependent on our cars. We're dependent on fuel for those cars. We're dependent on the buildings for school. And just because what we're dependent on is a little different, or, you know, might need more customization, it'll benefit everyone in the end as well. You know, accessibility is just, it's good design. It's going to benefit everyone. And when all the non-disabled people, you know, get old and start needing walkers or start needing all of those things, they're going to benefit from everything we're fighting for too. So you know, it's a human rights thing. I think everyone can benefit from this.
I always say that when they build a ramp next to a staircase, you also see non-disabled people using the ramp.
Yeah, it's so true.
Yeah, and so that should tell us something that, I mean, maybe the staircases are not their ideal design, the design for going up to another level. I mean, why do we even need staircases for that matter? If there can be ramps that everybody can use.
Yeah, it's very true. There are so many things that, you know, could change for the better, and then everything adapts with time anyway, right? We find new things to do things. Like, look how much more dependent, like, how phones change for that matter. And that's one thing that just, it really weirds me out that we have this age of technology where we're so advanced, yet for some reason, you know, disabled people fell through the cracks and no one designed that many accessible things for what we have. Like, you would think that everything could be easily accessed now. And though technology provided so much access for us, even just like little things about mainstream cultures and apps like Instagram, and like how stories aren't accessible on Instagram at all. Or, you know, like little things like that in everyday apps that we even use, that, you know, accessibility isn't thought of first. And it just weirds me out because technology used to be adaptive things for us. Like, you know, for me in school growing up, you know, I was the only kid with a laptop because laptops helped me type easier, so I didn't have to write out all my notes. Or and so it was like specialized for me. And then now everyone has it, and it's not as accessible anymore.
So, speaking of apps, laptops, and other things, what assistive devices, what assistive technology do you use to help you go about your daily life?
Yes. So, well, obviously my wheelchair is a big one. Without that, I would be bedridden. So I love my chair. It also reclines, so I can relax and do things a lot easier. My office desk is actually an adjustable height desk. So anytime I get like a new chair, if I need the height, like table height and lowered, I can do it without having to get assistance in that. I use an actual like Wacom tablet for my work, and like this little, I can actually pull this one up because it's really light, this super lightweight little keyboard that I use so that I can pick it up and move it around. On my phone, I use the talk, like text to speech so much, where I'll just speak words and let it type instead of me actually having to type out the whole thing, which is a huge lifesaver, especially when I'm exhausted. Yeah, that's pretty much mostly what I use.
So I saw your hands. I didn't realize that it affected your hands as well, and you're able to draw and everything with it. Wow.
Yeah, so I have.
Mm-hmm. Go ahead.
Sorry, I interrupted.
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
Yeah, so I my dexterity is off. Like, I can't make a fist. I can't really lift things more than like 2 pounds. My laptop actually is 2 pounds, and I got it the MacBook. It's not the Air, but it's like the even smaller version. And it's the only laptop I've ever been able to open up myself because it's so light. So yeah, so for dexterity, I use this digital tablet pen. And it's actually been a huge step for me because growing up, I always painted. I did everything. I had a little easel that would go up and down so I could paint, and I loved it. And when I was, given that question, like every high schooler is, what are you going to do? What are you going to do with your life? I was exhausted. I couldn't paint anymore. And I was frustrated with that because, I wanted to go into art into some way. And finding a digital tablet and working in Photoshop to paint or working in Illustrator to draw has just opened up everything. It's the reason why I wanted to become a graphic designer, because it was the most accessible way I could do art. It was all digital. I could run my own business, so I didn't have to worry about hours and deadlines or the 9 to 5, or making sure like the design firms were accessible for me. So I decided right from the get-go, I'm going to freelance. I'm going to, learn how to draw on the computer and do it digitally. And it's opened up my whole world for my freelancing career.
That's amazing. That's amazing. I really admire those of you who are artistically inclined. But some of us, we have never been able to draw or paint or anything. I mean, I'm just not. Honestly, I'm just not good at those things. I think it's probably the left brain, right brain thing. That thing that they always talk about. I am more scientifically, mathematically, logically inclined than the arts people. But I really admire the arts because I really appreciate what it takes to come up with a beautiful picture or beautiful drawing or whatever. And for me, there's this young man in Ghana who has cerebral palsy, and he uses his mouth to paint. So he puts the paintbrush in his mouth, and he comes up with very, very beautiful pictures. Now we try to get him one of those digital drawing pens that you have. But unfortunately, it will be a bit difficult because of the saliva and
Yeah.
on the mouth drooling onto the pen and all that.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know whether they have an an alternative for people like that. They should, because I mean, for the past 20 or so years, we have seen pictures of people using their feet to draw, or their mouth to draw, and all those things. I mean, those are some of the other assistive technology devices that they should think of about doing.
Yeah, definitely, 100%. Like
Yeah.
that, and that's what I mean. We're adaptive. We're gonna paint with our mouth and feet if we have to. Like, we can figure it out, and I love that.
Yeah, that's true, and I really admire that about us, because I always say that when I go into a room or into a different environment that I'm not used to, the first thing that I do mentally is to look for the places where I could possibly fall and try and
Mm-hmm.
protect myself from that. I immediately inspect the floor. Is it slippery? If it's slippery, then I know I have to walk more gingerly than I would on a normal circumstances and all those things. And people without our challenges, they don't go through any of those things. So they don't appreciate any of those situations that we find ourselves having to deal with. And I'm sure for you, before you even go anywhere, you have to find out whether the place is wheelchair accessible.
Yes, I do a lot of planning. Actually, that whole trip to New York for that job that I did was the first time I even traveled without family. I just traveled with like one care worker, and I had to plan out the entire trip to make sure it was accessible. It took probably a couple weeks to map out the train, call the people on the train to see how wide the doorway is to the train, because I never used it before, so I had to make sure I could fit through it. Calling the, actually one thing I had to do, because I couldn't bring I have a commode. So like I have like a toilet chair that I sit on, and that way it like gets wheeled over the toilet seat. And I couldn't bring that with me on the train. So one of the things I had to figure out, because it was considered like odd package or something like that, like they wouldn't let me bring it. So, because I took a train right from like Toronto to New York City. It was like a 13-hour train ride. And because I can't really fly. So I took a 13-hour train ride. I called my cousin in the States. I ordered a toilet seat from her. She dropped it off at the hotel so that I could get it there. I didn't even know what it was going to look like. I found out when I was there that it didn't even have a backing on it. So I had to like use all of my muscles to keep myself up straight for the trip. And yeah, it just took like a lot of adapting. One of my favorite little things, a friend had told me this a few years ago, and it was one of my favorite things she told me. She said, you have so many extraordinary little talents that like no one would pay attention to because like no one would think of it. But like, you spit out your gum and you hit a garbage can every time because you can't like, reach it. Or, I notice you staring at everyone's feet while you're driving because like you're already predicting the way they're going to move and if they're going to walk into you and where you have to maneuver so that, people don't walk into you and get in your way. And it's like, thank you. Yes, I am an expert. I've been driving for 25 years. I've been driving my wheelchair now. So I had it when I was 4.
Wow. Yeah. It's not as easy as it looks driving the wheelchair. I actually used one during my stay in the UK, and because for the first time I was completely alone, and I had to figure out how to get to from my room to lectures, and I couldn't walk that distance, so I got a motorized wheelchair. And, and it's not as easy as it looks, especially if you haven't used it before. I kept
Yeah.
on crashing into various objects. After a while, the foot pedal got broken from me crashing into walls and all that. After that, I realized that I'm just not the kind of person who can drive, because I don't have that good coordination skills. And and it's something that you have to be able to use some of those devices. Prior to getting the wheelchair, they gave me a 3-wheel scooter. I mean, the scooter was even worse, because after a while the bumper got broken and that. I said, no, I'm a very bad driver. I know where my limitations are. Yeah. And it's very important for us to realize what our limitations are. It doesn't mean that we'll not attempt to surpass them. But still, if you understand that this is not for me, then you know what you can do, what you can't do.
Exactly. Like we're our own advocates, and sometimes you don't know till you try, and you try it and then you figure out if it's for you or not. I mean, every time I get a new chair, it's a learning curve all over again. Cause it's like, and when I went from back wheel drive where the big wheel's in the back to mid wheel drive where the big wheel is actually in the middle, it changed my entire way of driving that I had known for about like 20 years. And it's amazing. Like I can turn on a dime. But when my sister and I got it, like she nauseous so much on a dime that she got like motion sickness from it. And or I would be driving and all of a sudden I'd turn and my whole back wheels would like smack a row of desks behind me or something, because I just wasn't used to the space that it took up or the difference in the space that it took up. So it's definitely a learning curve. And even growing up, there would be things that non-disabled experts would be like, oh, wear casts or do this, or let's try this like arm stretch thing. And some of it I would take, and then others I would say like, thanks, but no thanks. Like that doesn't work for me. That's not, it's causing me more pain than good. Or, I don't mind if my feet bend because I'll just go find some different shoes. So I think we all have our own, like, we know what works for us and not, and we'll try it. But we, at the end of the day, like no solution is going to be good for the whole group. We're all going to have to find our own ways as well.
Yeah, and we actually are our own best doctors. We know what is wrong with our bodies. The doctors,
Yep.
yeah, and so for me, sometimes I believe, when I go to the hospital or something, I believe in telling the doctor everything that is wrong with me, and also coming up with my own suggestions, because it's my body. I know what is going on in me better than you. I don't care how many years you have spent studying medicine. You haven't spent that amount of time studying me. I have spent
Yeah.
41 years studying myself, so I know what works for me and what doesn't work for me, right?
Exactly. And I mean, like in a perfect world, that's what it would be. It would be a good teamwork or partnership, where they
Yeah.
value our data and our input as much as the advice they're giving. Because even us, I had a doctor that, wanted me to take creatine. It was like a big push. It was like, you have to take this. I tried for so long too. I was trying, my stomach was getting upset. I was getting really bad stomach cramps. I was like, I can't do this anymore. And every time they'd just be like, well, maybe you should try. And it's like, no, like, it's like, I'm telling you, my body doesn't agree to it. I can't do it, And there's nothing wrong with that either. I feel like we're so like, I don't know. Sometimes it's like, maybe it's an internalized thing I have where it's like, I feel like I just have this like really bad thing to say, it's okay if I can't do this, or it's okay if I accept the limitations. It's like you said, we can find our way around things and we can find our ways to maybe surpass our limitations. But I think it's really also radical to even just say, yeah, you know what? That's something I can't do. And that's fine. That doesn't make me any less than, that doesn't change my worth in society or the medical field or anything, It's not me trying to be non-disabled. It's you accepting me as disabled.
It's interesting because I was having a conversation with somebody last week, and he asked me. She said that, do I mind being called disabled? And I said that I actually like to be called disabled because I am disabled, as opposed to being called differently abled and all those things. Because I mean, I don't know where they came up with the term differently abled, but I think sometimes, in their bid to be politically correct, they end up causing more harm than good. Because if you say I'm
Yeah.
differently abled, then everybody is differently able, because there are things that everybody cannot do. I mean, even those who don't have any disability, there are still things that they cannot do. So if you are going to classify us as being differently able, then everybody in the world is differently able. But there are a lot of things that we cannot do that makes us fall under the category of being disabled. And I don't see anything wrong with it. I mean, I don't know what you think.
No, I honestly agree. I've always said disabled. I've always called myself disabled. My sister and I usually crack jokes when someone's like, like the one that gets me the most is special needs. It's like, okay, my needs aren't like that special. They're just needs. But they do. It's like people try to go around the word so much because they're so worried about like offending or anything that it's like, you're missing the point. Disabled is a word. It's just what I am. It's identifier. And like, other people in the disabled community might not agree, and I'm all for however they want to identify, if someone else prefers another term or person with disability for them or whatever, by all means. But like in the non-disabled world, like just say the word disabled. It's fine. Like I would rather change people's perspectives on what disability is and what a disability lifestyle is than to have to go around it with like 50 different words that don't define it. Like, I love what you said about that. Like, everyone has different abilities. You know, there are plenty of people who, like you said, wouldn't, you know how to draw on a tablet. I have no idea how to be a software engineer. Like, I wouldn't know the first thing of where to start. So we all have, quote, different abilities. We're disabled. We're owning it. Just let us own it.
Exactly, and be proud of it, because I think it's very important for us to be proud of what we go through, because a lot of people cannot live our lives or survive a day in our shoes. They'll kill themselves because of the frustration and all that stuff. So as long as you have a disability and you're able to live your best life, it's something to be proud of. So own it. Own it. Yeah, own it. I mean, I remember being asked, by somebody in an interview whether I'd rather not have a disability. And I said, if I didn't have a disability, sure, my life would have been very easy for me, but I wouldn't have had the kind of impact that it's having. So you have to realize what your purpose is in life and accept the good and bad that comes with that purpose. So
that's totally the thing. Like, even if we weren't disabled, we would be dealing with other things in our life as well, you know? And like, I always, people always ask that too. And for me, it's like, the only thing I would ever wish, if I had to wish, and I hate that anyway, because I don't believe in looking at things that aren't the reality, it's like, I hope for a better future. I hope for a better thing, even with like, accessibility, but I'm living in the now, I'm living with how things are going now. And sure, I would like less pain, maybe be able to lift my arm up a little bit more so I can reach something in the higher thing. But do I want to not be disabled? No, I love my identity. I love what it shaped a lot of my world. It shaped my humor, the way I look at things. And of course, like, parents do that too. Like, there's so many things that affect our lives and who, like, why we become what we become. And my disability taught me so much, like empathy, adapting, just a better understanding and comfort with the unknown or mortality or things that people are afraid to talk about. And I've had to deal with a lot of these things. I lived my whole life thinking that I was only supposed to live till 2. So it changes things, it changes your perspective on life. It changes what you value in life. And I love what it taught me. I don't want to get rid of it. I like that I can sit down and drive around where I got to go. Walking seems exhausting to me. You got to put one leg in front of the other to get everywhere. It seems like it's not worth it. I'll just drive there.
now speaking of what you just said, you just said something. Oh, I forgot it. That's not what you just said. Oh, there was something that you just said I wanted to ask about. Oh God, this memory thing sometimes. So anyway, let's talk about the humor thing, because I realized that those of us who most of us who have disabilities are very funny, because we tend to laugh a lot about ourselves, and and some of us also have that sarcasm within us, yeah, and I guess it comes from people having misconceptions about you, and you always having to correct them. After a while, you just get fed up and start giving sarcastic and cheeky answers to some of the questions that you get, right?
Oh yeah, huge defense mechanism. It's just, I'll deflect that with humor. I have the energy to crack a joke instead.
No, I remembered what I was going to ask. So what was it like living knowing that every day, every year after the age of 2 you could die? I mean, I can't imagine what that life would have been like. I mean, expecting that that maybe this year would be my last year. I mean, what kind of, I mean, how do you go through life like that? I mean,
Well, I tell you, our doctor now looks at us and says, "Oh, you could easily, live into your 60s probably if I had to estimate." And I remember that.
Jessica, please hold on 1 minute. My internet has gone.
Okay.
Oh,
How am I doing? Still
yeah, okay.
choppy?
No, yeah, okay.
Okay. Yeah, so to answer your question, when I lived with the low life expectancy of 2, I was living in a very safe bubble as well as like a one day at a time. It was a great way to live, and it was also like an excuse to hold me back on a lot of things for myself that I was afraid to do. We have this really morbid joke around the house that like, yeah, I have my funeral planned out more than I would have like my wedding planned out. Like, I know exactly what music I would want to play, and my mom, like, she joked around too. She was like, I used to think of those things. Like, I would play the Aladdin soundtrack for Leanna because it was her favorite, or, and we joke about those sorts of things. We'd have those conversations where even some of my friends would be weirded out. They'd be like, can you please stop talking about your funeral? And I'm like, but I know what I want. So it was a very like, I was very just appreciative. It would be, and I actually ignored a lot of like future worries that I had because it was like, well, I don't even know if I'll get there. So let's just work on today, and it was a very good perspective, I think. But it held me back on a lot of things too, because, I never bothered putting myself out there for dating at the time because I was like, well, what's the point? Why get rejected when I don't even know if I'm going to be here? And then, things like that. And then 10 years ago when we got the diagnosis change, and the whole like future came about, our first comment, and the doctor just looked at us like we were so weird, was, oh my God, now I got to go through menopause. I didn't want to go through menopause. Our first thought was just like, oh no, like, and they were so weirded out, and we were like, oh no, I mean, yes, this is great news. And I'm not gonna lie, it was actually hard. I actually went through a time like I needed to go through therapy for a bit because I was just overwhelmed by this all of a sudden like future that I had to plan that I never planned. Like, here I am I was maybe 20 at the time. I just like fresh out of college. I didn't know about, who was going to take care of me when my parents get older, where am I going to live? What am I going to want to do with my life? Do I want to get married? Do I want to do these sorts of things? Like, I had all of these questions come in, and I had like, an existential crisis in my mid-20s because I had no idea how to plan for it. And in a weird way, I'm almost getting back to that, living every day like it was your last mentality, like appreciating the now while also now planning for a potential future. And I finally have a good handle on it. I'm very excited about where I can go and where I want to see myself for my job, where I want to see myself in life. And it's exciting because I've never thought about these things before. And it's also kind of scary.
So your condition is it hereditary? Because both of you and your sister have it. I mean,
yes. So it's very odd. It's not anywhere else in our family. Like, we're the only two that have this physical disability. Our brother, he's older than us, and he's completely non-disabled. He also loves to work out and stuff. So our joke is that he took all the good DNA and he left us.
Are you twins or?
No, we're 2 years apart. So here's the weird part.
Wait, my internet has gone down again. Wait,
here's where our doctor.
No. Okay. Go ahead.
Okay, so the weird part really is that 2 years apart, but I'm basically a copy of my sister. So like whatever the deficiency is, it's exactly the same in me as what it is in her. They don't know what it is yet, but they know it's the same. So the odds of that happening when it's not a hereditary thing, like there's no genes within my parents that say like they don't have a degenerative disease themselves. So there's no like, it's like an abnormality. And so they said the odds of hitting that twice is like hitting the lottery twice. Like the genetic odds of that happening is so rare. So currently we're working with a genetic specialist as well as a neuromuscular specialist research facility in the States. I don't remember where it is. We're waiting to hear feedback. So they're basically like scanning all of our genetic code against each other to see what the difference is, and then to scan it against the database to see if there's any matching like known disabilities out there that match it. Because so far all of like the generic like neuromuscular or muscular disorders, it all came back negative. So we don't really know. And we're kind of used to not knowing, since even when we had SMA, they always told us, oh, you know, you're kind of in an other category anyway. So I'm kind of used to not knowing what it is. But yeah, and people always mistaken my sister and I for twins. Always. I think it's like they're genuinely shocked. And like that, it's like, wait, you have two disabled kids who aren't twins. Like you had another kid after, and we're like, yep, they did it again.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's amazing, and I can't imagine what your parents have gone through, because I mean, we always look at it from our point of view, but how about your parents? They had to go through this not just once but twice, and they are still going through it twice. But and I'm sure it has also taken its toll on them. I mean, they had to do
My
a
parents
lot
are
of adjustments and all that to their lifestyle.
You know, my parents are the coolest people. I love them so much. They're half the reason why I'm so strong at advocating and why we don't think disability is like a big thing. It's my parents always said, even after Leanna, like when they got pregnant with me, they said, I don't care either way. Like what? And I remember it's actually a joke too. You know, my uncle called and they were like, when I was born, and they're like, how's Jess? Like, how is she? And my dad's like, she's great. She's healthy. She's this, she's that. And they were like, oh, thank goodness. And she goes, and he's like, oh, no. It's like, she's disabled too. Like, she's the same as Leanna. And like, we all laugh because that's their perspective, you know, like their goal from the very beginning was like, all right, let's expose them to as much as we can, because again, they thought we were living on borrowed time, right? So it was like, if we can save up to go to Disney World, if we can see, like, you know, if we can go do this, or just like wants to go on a roller coaster, let's get her on that roller coaster, like that kind of thing. And then the opposite, it's like, we just see it as our life, you know, like my parents too, like they just see it as like, yeah, that's a part of our day to day. Our transition now, believe it or not, I don't know if it has something to do with the Italian culture or if it's just like my parents being the amazing stubborn people they are, but like I'm having a hard time convincing them to get care for me. I'm like, you guys don't have to do it anymore. Like, retire. It's okay. I'll get people in. And they're like, why? We're here. We can do it. We've been doing it our whole lives. Like, and that's their perspective, you know, that's their mentality. And I love them for it. It made me a strong-headed advocate type person who like is realistic. Like I know the confines that I live within, but I'm also like adamant on, you know, what I need and how to advocate for that, because they taught me how to be that way. You know, they even in school, if we ever had an issue with like accessibility, or if we needed help because people weren't listening to our needs, my mom would be like, okay, did you talk to them? And they'd be like, yes. And then she'd call in and be like, okay, so when Jess says she needs this, she needs that. Just listen to her. She's good. She knows what she needs. And if I need to come in and help out, I will. But like, you know, if she told me that, it's pretty much that.
Yeah, I think those of us who are strong, who are who are usually very outspoken and very self-conscious about our disabilities, is because of the foundations that we have. It's because of what our parents told us growing up. And and I like to use this opportunity to appeal to all parents of children with disabilities that no matter what state your child is in, you should speak positive words to that child so that that child will grow up believing that he or she is capable of doing a lot with their lives.
Yeah,
And you
exactly.
have done an amazing job, and I'm very happy to talk to you. Thank you so much for agreeing to be on this show. And do you have any question for me?
Well, first of all, I want to say thank you so much for having me. This is like a huge, exciting, like my life came full circle. I drew you 2 years ago, and that started my entire like work in disability and design. And then now I get to be interviewed by you. I'm just in like a really surreal place right now. Yeah, like how did you find like what was your biggest obstacle for advocating for yourself, do you find?
Um, Honestly, I didn't really like you. It's just a day at a time thing. I never set out to say I was advocating for myself or anything. I mean, I live in a country where there are basically no facilities for people with disabilities. It wasn't like that when I was in school, and right now we are still pushing for inclusive education because most children with disabilities are not in schools or anything. So it's, but for me, I just I mean I grew up. I was homeschooled by my mother until I was 12 years old. Then I went into mainstream school for 3 years. By that time, I had a very good foundation, so I was able to compete equally with my classmates. The only problem was the handwriting because of the neurological condition of cerebral palsy. It affected my ability to hold the pen and the pencil very well. So I can write, but it's a bit problematic, especially when I have to write for a long time and you get tired and all that. So I started using the computer at a very early age for that reason. And
Mhm.
so when it comes to advocating for myself, I don't really see it as advocating for myself as it is as much as telling people off when they annoy me with one thing or the other. And I do that a lot here. So I mean, if I need something and you're not providing it for me, or you talk to me a certain way, I'll tell you up. And usually they don't expect people with disabilities to talk back to them. But when you do, they're taken aback, and for a few seconds they really don't know what to do or say. And I always find it very amusing. And before you go, one question I wanted to ask is how is surviving John COVID? How, because this COVID thing is I mean those of us with social needs or, or whatever needs it's a big challenge for some of us, especially those of you who need caregivers. You have to test
Mhm.
them before they come in and all that. What are some of the challenges that you are facing because of COVID?
Yeah, it's been a ride. You know, I'm used to isolating in the sense that, you know, if people are sick, I don't go out with them. Or in the winter, I'm usually trapped at home most of the time because it's harder to get out and things like that.
Okay.
So I'm used to the feeling a bit, but where it really comes into hard, and I'm very fortunate that my dad's getting to work from home during this with his job, which is very great because we actually reduced our care workers down to just twice a week because we couldn't keep having different people coming in and out of our home every day, even wearing masks. I mean, they're going from and so like it's been hard there. So we've kind of reduced our care because we're worried about the spread. Socializing, I mean, I haven't been. People come over a little bit in the backyard, and I have wonderful friends who, you know, wash their hands stay 6 feet apart from me, do all the precautions. They're really careful about my health. And I'm very fortunate in this to have amazing friends and family who love and support me and who understand the realities of COVID and the severity of it for people with disabilities. So I'm very, very fortunate that I have the care here at home. I've been trying to just like, take it one day at a time as far as mental health, and trying to know that this too will pass. It's not going to be forever. And my only hope is that we can actually learn from this and hopefully create better accessibility and better health knowledge for each other in the future, so that people will know, not to get each other sick. Or we've clearly shown that we can do things online. So I guess we can do remote, education, and we can do remote jobs for people with disabilities. We just proved it can happen. So I hope that it brings a better future.
I also hope so, because if not, then this past 10 months have been for nothing. I mean, if you don't learn from this, then you're going to go back to what it was before. But then there was no point in going through all this trouble. Yeah.
Exactly. And let's not pretend what was before was working, because it wasn't. It was exhausting before. Let's make it better.
Yeah. So Jessica, thank you once again. I really appreciate your time, and I hope we can do this again. And maybe next time your sister can also come on. It should not come on shy, and it will be lovely. It will be lovely to have you again. All right.
Thank you so much. Again, I definitely look forward to that. And keep well, okay?
I will. Take care. Bye-bye.
You